What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Go Talk with Marcus, powered by Podex, fueled by Goat Fuel. Sal Vassalo of Sports and the Big Apple's on the show, so you know what that means. It means it's pay-per-view time. Hell in a Cell is upon us, and we've got a lot to talk about, not just with Hell in a Cell, but also some otherworldly wrestling things have happened aside from Hell in a Cell that we're going to get into. Before we get into all that, what's up, Sal? How you doing today?
Very good, very good. You kind of reminded me that the NBA Finals start tonight. So Celtics versus the Warriors. I've been paying a lot of attention to the Stanley Cup playoffs because I still have a horse in that race with the Rangers.
Rangers the other day too, 6-2 over the Lightning. That was
Yeah, I mean, you got to take advantage of a team that has had 9 days off. Obviously, they looked slow, and Andre Vasilevsky gave up more goals in one game than he did the entire second round against the Florida Panthers. So I expect it to be a great series. Probably going to go 7. Could honestly probably go either way. But I definitely expect the Lightning to play a lot better.
I'm sure they will. They're the defending Stanley Cup champs for a reason. Before we get into Hell in a Cell, because I think we have a really good Hell in a Cell card, a decent one. Let's talk about AEW for a second. And we don't usually dive too deep into AEW, but two incredible things have occurred in AEW over the last couple of days that are worth mentioning. The first one is we now live in a world for the first time since 2011 where CM Punk holds a world championship in a wrestling company. He is also the first and only person ever, because some of these championships don't exist anymore. He's the first person to hold the AEW, the WWE, the World Heavyweight, ECW, and Ring of Honor championships. Because the ECW and the World Heavyweight Championship no longer exist, no one else can match that feat. So CM Punk is in a class of his own. I have mixed opinions on CM Punk being world champion again. How do you feel about Punk walking out of Double or Nothing as world champion?
I mean, I think at some point you saw it coming. I mean, you knew like if he was like he comes back, he says, I give him a lot of credit for it. He came back when he said he was ready because of all the stuff that happened in WWE. He comes back and it took them a little bit longer than I thought it would have. Like I thought they would have jumped on putting the title on him, but they didn't really do that. They gave it to Hangman Page first. But it's great to see Punk as a champion again. He's a little bit older nowadays, but obviously still a great performer. And it's great because it's something that he really didn't rush himself into. He didn't rush himself back to wrestling, and it wasn't like a rush title push. Like they didn't say 2 weeks in, push him for the title, push him, just shove him into the picture, which is something you easily could have seen. Which would have been a very WWE thing to do. So I think AEW, in that way, did a great job booking this, and I think it's a one-up over their rival WWE. So it's a great job by them.
I love Punk. Punk, one of my favorite wrestlers. I'm just not a fan of the world champion Punk at this point. I don't know, and I'm probably like in a class of my own, if not very few. It's not that Punk doesn't deserve it. Like I think Punk deserves it, and you're going to benefit from it because people still enjoy watching Punk wrestle. I just feel like there are better options in AEW to put the world title on. I thought, and we'll talk about him in a second, I thought MJF would get his hands on the title before Punk. I thought Daniel Bryan would get his hands on the title before Punk. And there's just a lot of different like names that you can throw out there. I thought Adam Cole would get his hands on the title before Punk. Keith Lee, I thought, would be in the picture as well. They've brought in so much talent that you could put in the world championship picture, and it makes sense. And they had Bryan debut, and then they had Hangman win the ladder match and then beat Kenny. So, okay, well, you know that Daniel's not going to win it. Adam Cole lost his match for the champion for the title. I don't think we haven't seen Keith Lee anywhere near the championship. It looks like they're going to keep going with him and Swerve as tag teams. as a tag team for now, but they also lost their match at Double Nothing for the tag team titles on Triple Threat match. I love Punk. Punk's fantastic, and he deserves it. And Punk is obviously still a draw at this point in his career. I just feel like there's a lot more other guys that you could have put in this position at this point. I mean, it's hard to crap on it because it's CM Punk, and everyone's missed CM Punk, and they love Punk, and I love Punk too, and I missed him too. I'm not the biggest fan of the World Championship being on Punk. That's all. I've never really been a big fan of old world champions. Like with Chris Jericho, it made sense because he had the name value, and it's like, oh, wait, like Chris Jericho is the world champion of this new company. That's obviously means something. Outside of that, though, I guess every case is different, but I'm not the biggest fan of it. I wish they would have just had Hangman retain. Because I feel like Hangman beating Punk for the championship to retain, to me anyway, it means a lot more than CM Punk beating Hangman Adam Page to win the championship. Like, and I feel like you should always do what's best as far as bolstering the value of the championship, and the value of the AEW World Championship hasn't been boosted. Not to say that it won't be boosted during Punk's reigns. I'm sure Punk's reign will be fantastic, but going into championship matches, especially World Championship matches, my mindset is always whoever comes out on the other end is going to have gained something from winning the championship, and therefore the championship will have gained value. And CM Punk hasn't gained anything by becoming the AEW World Champion outside of being the first person and only person in history to hold all these different world championships and all these different companies. That's really it. Like, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see. Like, he did just win the championship like 5 days ago on Sunday. Like, we'll have to see what happens. But right now, my initial reaction is just I'm really hesitant to just go all in and be like, yes, for AEW World Champion CM Punk. That's my only pushback.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think like we're talking to MJF and like these this is the ultimate ex WWE guy. I think probably more so than Jericho. Like Jericho's kind of been like a star in the wrestling industry. Punk has always been known as like a WWE guy.
Yeah.
But also I think there's a group of like I think it's good for AEW in terms of ratings and viewership, because I think there's a group of WWE fans that watch AEW solely for like a CM Punk, a Daniel Bryan, a Chris Jericho. So everyone kind of laughs at AEW bringing in all this WWE talent, but Punk brings, I think, all that extra viewership just on his own. So I think at some point AEW had to capitalize on it. Whether this was the right time to do it remains to be seen. Depends on how they handle it, because I don't think it shouldn't be. It should be a decent reign. It shouldn't be like this, because like you said, he really has nothing to gain from it. So give him a nice world title run, but then make it mean something. I think if you can make this mean something to one of the stars that you want to build, like an MJF, where Punk ends up putting like somebody like that over, I think it's a great move. But I think for now, it's good for all those, big CM Punk fans that may only watch AEW for CM Punk. So I think it's great for them and AEW as a whole, because obviously, Punk being world champion is going to be huge. It's going to get a huge pop, and it's going to increase the ratings. So I think as long as it doesn't go on for too long, and you make it mean something at the end by putting somebody else over, and like a younger, a star that preferably an AEW guy, I think it could work.
So let's talk about AEW guys for a second. MJF gave the promo of his life on Wednesday, and people going back and forth, the word shoot, real or fake. I think it was a worked shoot. No, it was a worked shoot. The up and ups, the decision makers, the executives of Warner Media, who own Turner, one of the two. I can't think of the name right now. I think it's Warner. The people that run TNT were at AEW Dynamite on Wednesday. And given, I wish I could play it for you, but I can't play it for you because it gets real vulgar. and it also probably get taken down because AEW owns it. So just look up MJF's promo from June 1st, 2022 episode of Dynamite. It's a great promo. Basically, his reaction or his response to the events of this past weekend, where there were reports coming out that he was leaving Vegas and his whole match with Wardlow was kind of up in the air. He did end up showing up and wrestling Wardlow, putting Wardlow over. Where's this going? Because I texted you not long after I saw the promos. I didn't see the promo live. I saw it after. And I texted you not long after, and I was like, did you see the promo? And we were kind of having a little discussion about it. Where does it go? Because this is obviously a work for sure. You're not going to put a live mic or a hot mic if in a disgruntled superstar's hands on live TV with the executives being there without having some sort of control. So what do you think is the end goal? What do you think? Where do you think this is going? Because I think it's really up in the air as to where this is going. Given great promo though, fantastic promo.
Yeah, I mean the promo made me think of two people. It made me think of CM Punk, just from all the the shoots in WWE, and it made me think of the Miz promo on Daniel Bryan on Talking Smack as another promo where Miz is just getting really emotional. But I think this was AEW kind of playing off the criticism that all the WWE guys are the ones that get the push. We just talked about the ultimate WWE guy, CM Punk getting the world title before MJF. But I think this is kind of AEW's way of kind of building their own star and doing it in the most. I'm a little surprised that the promo went as far as it did, to where he was basically begging to be fired. But I think it's genius, because I think you played right off of what people criticized you for. And if they can use this to use the fans' criticism to catapult MJF into that star main event title picture to the point where he eventually wins, I think it could be just genius.
I love MJF so much, and I will be the first to admit that I really, really, really want MJF to jump ship. I've been saying for a long time that I thought MJF would be the first. Like we talk a lot about guys going from WWE to AEW. I always thought that MJF would be the first guy to go from AEW to WWE. Obviously, Cody did that first, but it's kind of an extenuating circumstance because of who his father is and all that stuff, and it kind of just makes sense. I still want that to happen. I still want to see MJF as world champion in AEW, but this promo has me so confused. I know it's a work. Everything he said was legitimate. Everything he said bared some value. He was obviously very emotional. To your point, it did kind of remind me of The Miz a little bit. Now that you say that, I mean, think about it. It does kind of remind me of The Miz talking on Talking Smack about Daniel Bryan, and just kind of talking about how he's always disrespected, and of course had the pipe bomb elements of kind of saying things that you wouldn't expect a superstar to say about their boss on live TV on that show in front of so that the world can see. I don't know what to make of it, honestly. Outside of that, I don't know. I don't know where you go from here. It's really hard to get that roadmap out, because we talk about MJF being world champion, but like I feel like with Punk being champion now, are we really going to be looking at that feud so soon? Like that feud ended two months ago or so. Like, are we going to revisit that feud right now? I would hope not. Like, and there's a video of Punk kind of chasing MJF out of the ring at the end once they had cut his mic after he called Tony Khan a effing mark. And they cut the commercial. There's a fan video of CM Punk coming out from out the back and kind of chasing MJF into the crowd and going back up the ramp. But like, I don't know. It's really hard to pinpoint what's next with that. And it'll be interesting. And I think that's what they wanted, was just to get some interest. Not they don't have any, but like to get people to tune in, because now people want to know what's next with that. Like, we all know it's a work or a work shoot or whatever you want to call it, but we also know that there's going to be a follow-up to that, and what that follow-up is going to be very, very interesting. I just can't pinpoint it, and I think that's what's got me a little bit nervous, is you have started off whatever program that's about to happen with this grand slam of a promo, and it made such a massive impact and had such a massive ripple effect to the IWC that you can't follow this up with nothing. Like, the payoff for whatever is coming has to be massive. You don't have a promo that strong to kick off something, whatever it is, if it is kicking off something, and then just turn it into nothing. You know what I mean? Like, you really have whatever's at the other end of the rainbow, for lack of a better term, has to be perfect. Like, everything that follows this up have to be perfect, which is why, while I know it's a work shoot, I also kind of feel like it might not be. Like, it is also very possible that they just really wanted to let MJF kind of get it all out, and then maybe they thought, okay, well, now he's gone too far. It was so good that while you know it's a shoot, it's hard to look at it and think that maybe it wasn't, even though we all know that it is. But whatever happens at the end, it has to be perfect. I don't care if it's a world championship. I don't care if it's a contract thing. I don't care what it is. Whatever happens in this storyline, because it's all going to play out on TV, whatever it is, it has to be perfect. Every single step of it has to be perfect, and the payoff has to be massive. Or this insanely great promo, probably the best shoot promo we've seen on national TV since the pipe bomb, would be all for nothing. And that would be a bigger loss, a bigger hurt, a bigger hit than if this is real. Like, if this is real, you can come back from that. Okay, yeah, well, MJF was upset. He got a high mic. He didn't tell anyone what he was going to say. He just kind of let it all out. Now he's gone. But if you do this and it's real, and then you kind of play through all of it, and then it kind of is anticlimactic, that's not good.
I feel like we're going to find out quickly if it was truly like, we'll find out like very quickly within the next couple of weeks if it was like a real thing. It depends on how it goes. I mean, obviously, like I think it's a work shoot, but it's the first steps are going to be monumentally important because, like, where do you go? Like, because you're thinking like MJF would go right after the WWE guy Punk, but they're not going to do that right away.
Yeah,
like you said, the feud was 2 months ago. Punk just won the world title, and if MJF is going after Punk again, MJF has to win that feud, I think, especially after this promo. So where I think is the bridge between the awesome promo and the feud between Punk and MJF once again. Like, what is MJF doing? Doesn't really matter so much what Punk is doing as long as you're giving him quality opponents. And I think the matches will still be very good. But it's just what does MJF do here? Does Tony Khan get involved? Like how Vince McMahon used to get involved? Like, because that's what I thought this was. This was a very Vince McMahon-esque thing to do.
Yeah,
by
sure.
Tony Khan. Like especially years ago, Vince McMahon getting heavily involved in the ring. Obviously, Vince now is a little older, probably can't do as much. Tony Khan's younger. Let's see. You want to really show people wrestling? Let's get involved here.
Yeah, it is worth noting. It is worth noting. Now, the last thing we have to talk about before we get into the card, and we will get into the card. This is a Hell in a Cell preview. I'm not BSing you guys. There's one major thing we have to talk about. Is WWE related. Sasha Banks and Naomi. There's been a lot going on with that. They won the women's tag team titles at WrestleMania. From what I understand from all the reports I read, and I spent a lot of the last couple of days reading every dirt sheet I could find to kind of make sure that I get everything correct to the best of my ability. So if I get a couple details wrong, I do apologize. But from what I understand, from everything that I've read and from everything that I've kind of seen and also know about the situation, it is reported that the reason why Sasha Banks and Naomi walked out of Monday Night Raw a couple weeks ago was because there was supposed to be this massive 6-pack challenge main event on Raw that week, which was advertised on Raw. It's going to be Sasha, Naomi, Becky Lynch, Asuka, and I'm blanking on the Sidian.
Doudrop,
and there was supposed to be one other person, and I can't think of who that other person was. EASH. And apparently what was supposed to happen was Sasha or Naomi was going to win that match to challenge Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship at Hell in a Cell. Now, Sasha and Naomi didn't like that, and so they walked out. And obviously now we're with the triple threat match, which we'll get into towards the end of the show when we actually dive into the Hell in a Cell card. The following SmackDown, so that was on Monday. That Friday, right before the main event, right before the title unification match between RK Bro and the Usos, Pat McAfee and Michael Cole had a breaking the fourth wall thing. They were talking to the audience, kind of like how we're doing right now. And basically, they brought up this entire thing about how Sasha Banks and Naomi disappointed the WWE Universe and all these other stuff and blah, blah, blah. You know how I feel about the women's tag team titles. I've been crap on the women's tag team titles for a very, very, very long time because it's pointless. And WWE has continued to show us that they are pointless. I read some other things where it looked like the plan was for Naomi to win that match. They weren't going to interact with each other. Sasha and Naomi obviously were not going to fight each other in this match. But if I remember correctly, memory serves, the plan was for Naomi to win this match, for Sasha Banks to go to SmackDown. And so what would happen is the two tag team champions would have two one-on-one championship matches. Sasha would face Ronda. Naomi would face Bianca Belair. Both ladies said that means nothing. We're the tag team champions. We need to be defending these titles on a card, which makes perfect sense because they didn't defend the titles at Backlash. What were your thoughts on all that? Because that was all kind of whoa, and they treated it like this was probably the biggest walkout since Stone Cold walked out back in 2003, and WWE did like a whole statement thing with that too. And I think he was on they put like a magazine had him on the cover and they had a story about it and all that stuff. Like this is kind of the biggest walkout blowout since then. What was your first reaction to all that? Like, did you think? Because I know a lot of people thought, "Oh, this is probably like a work," but then it's kept escalating. It's even escalated to the point where the women's tag team title tournament that was supposed to happen after they stripped Sasha and Naomi of the championships was scrapped a couple days ago. Like, how are you feeling? What's kind of your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I don't know, because at first, like, it's really easy to like look at this and think like Sasha and Naomi are being unprofessional, and especially like it just surprised me, especially because Naomi was supposed to win that match reportedly.
Yeah.
So like why Naomi would take herself out of a world title match, not one that she was going to win, obviously, but why would she do that? But they have a point, and I think they're really trying to push an issue that we've been talking about on the show, that the women's tag team titles really mean nothing. Like Sasha Banks has been around, who's won a lot of championships, has had a lot of meaningless short reigns.
A lot of meaningless short reigns. Her first time successfully defending a championship was when she was her most recent championship run, when she was SmackDown Women's Champion before she dropped it to Bianca Belair. Every other title reign before that, she would win it and drop it in her first title defense.
Yeah, so I mean,
this is also her first WrestleMania win. She hasn't won a match at WrestleMania since WrestleMania 38 when she wins
and that's
alongside Naomi.
It's shocking because she's one of the biggest stars in the company, and yet here she is, can't win a title defense, can't win a WrestleMania, and now for Sasha especially, now having the most useless titles put on them, and I'm pretty sure they were like, okay, we can do something like this, especially there's a lot of talent between Naomi and Sasha, and even though Naomi's talent has really been underappreciated in terms of titles, I think she's been SmackDown champion once, but that was a long time ago.
She was the third SmackDown Women's Champion. If I'm not mistaken, she beat Alexa Bliss for the title, and then she had to drop it because of injury, and then she won it back in that 6-pack challenge at WrestleMania 33 in Orlando, and then she dropped it to Natalya, I believe, at SummerSlam. Yeah. So she's a 2-time SmackDown Women's Champion, but she's so underappreciated.
It's not much.
It's not
for her. It's really not enough, and
she hasn't been in the world title picture since she lost the world title to Natalya at SummerSlam. It's been a very long time. That was I'm sure they had, if memory serves, they had a rematch after that, obviously, because that's what they do. But after that rematch with Natalya and she lost it, she hasn't had a meaningful one-on-one women's championship match since. I know she fought Charlotte a couple months ago, but that was to bolster her feud with Sonya Deville, so I don't even count that really because it meant nothing. She hasn't had a meaningful one-on-one shot for the championship. And
it was a good match, but I mean,
it was
you're right.
Fantastic match, but like we all knew she was going to lose. Like why book that?
Yeah,
I hate
that. But there's two levels to this. It's one that Naomi and Sasha probably thought, okay, we can do something with this. We can make the SmackDown women's titles relevant, or the women's tag team titles relevant, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And WWE's doesn't really want to work with them on it. I mean, were they just going to hold the titles and have it be for show?
Yeah,
just
that's
to say, hey, look, Sasha's going to be a champion. Look, Naomi's a champion. There you go. But it doesn't mean anything if you don't defend it. Like Asuka's last title reign, it means nothing because Nakamura's Intercontinental title reign, that was awful.
Awful.
Like,
it was awful.
And one more point is the second thing is you mentioned that Sasha and Naomi weren't going to interact in that six-pack women's challenge. But at the end of the day, it still would have said Naomi defeated Sasha Banks. It still would have said that in the record book. So I can see why they don't really want to. Why would they be in a match against each other when they're supposed to be, what I hope is elevating the women's tag team titles? It makes no sense.
Yeah. So this is, I think, my immediate reaction. This is something that I think has kind of been forgotten. If you remember back to the Elimination Chamber, or if you remember back to the promo that Sasha and Bayley gave after they had become the first ever women's tag champions in Elimination Chamber, I believe was 2018 or 2019, whichever one it was. Sasha gave mention to the fact that her and Bayley had been working on that for a long time. Like Sasha Banks and Bayley, but in this case, Sasha Banks is the reason why these championships exist. It's because her and Bayley were fighting for it backstage because they felt like it was important. And it is. When you have tag teams, look back at the tag teams in that match. You had Fire and Desire, which was Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose. That team no longer exists. You had the Riot Squad. That team no longer exists. You had Banks and Bayley. That team no longer exists, obviously. Absolution was in that. Well, that's the same thing. I'm sorry. Who else was in that match? That's how bad the match was. I don't remember who. I think Tamina and Nia Jax were in that match. Tamina has been relegated to the 24/7 championship picture, if you want to call it that. And Nia Jax doesn't work for the company anymore. And there's one more tag team that was in the match, and I'm just blanking.
The Iconics?
The Iconics, yes. And they don't work for the company anymore either. You go through the list of champions. You got Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross a couple times, Banks and Bayley a couple times. Charlotte Flair and Asuka have won the championships together. Shayna Baszler and Natalya have won the championships. Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax have won the championships. Natalya and Tamina have been in championship matches. Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan most recently have been in championship matches. So if you're going to create a tag team titles, you need to have a tag team division. And I know you guys are probably sick of me saying it, but I'm going to keep saying it because it just makes sense. These titles are supposed to be defended on all three brands. That was the whole premise behind it, is they're going to be defended on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. There was a match where Banks and Bayley were the champions in the Thunderdome era, or this was prior to the Thunderdome era. This was in the PC era during the pandemic. It was at the Great American Bash pay-per-view for NXT, and they were defending against a team like Io Shirai and somebody else. That would have been the perfect opportunity to get the women's tag team titles off the main roster because there's no tag teams on the main roster. There's a lot of tag teams in NXT. What did NXT do the very next week after that match? They introduced the NXT women's tag titles, which also mean nothing. And I don't think, well, someone's holding them right now, but like they don't mean as much. They mean a little bit more, but not as much. I've been saying for the last 2 years, which is almost as long as I've been having this show, coming up on 2 years in August. Actually, it's like 2 months today of the recording. I've been saying, and Sal's been here for every second I've said it, there needs to just be mid-card champions in the women's division. You don't have the luxury in the women's division of tag teams. Like you run down the list of tag teams on the men's division on Raw and SmackDown. Whether they are pushed or not, you got the Street Profits, you got the Usos, you had RK Bro, but they're no longer, at least for right now, it seems. You've got Eric and Ivar, the Viking Raiders. You've got Los Lotharios. You have all these different tag teams. And so it makes sense for there to be tag team champions for the men. It doesn't make sense for there to be tag team champions for the women because, number one, you keep splitting up the tag teams. And number two, you keep firing all the women. Every time at the end of every quarter when it's time for people to let go, a large chunk of that list is women. If you just look at the list, like every single time, you've got about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 women on all the rosters across all 3 brands getting fired. There's no need for there to be a tag team championships. Now, to the second point, and Sal mentioned it earlier, why are Sasha Banks and Naomi, the tag team champions, fighting in a match for the right to be the number 1 contender for a world championship? It doesn't make sense. Sasha and Naomi originally were under the impression that they would be starting a program where they would have a match this Sunday at Hell in a Cell against Doudrop and Nikki Ash, ASH. That was what they were under the impression of, and that's what they wanted. They wanted that. And reports have said that Sasha and Naomi, it's had nothing to do with Asuka or Becky or any of the other ladies that were in the match. It's literally just, it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't. Why? Why are your tag team champions fighting to be in a match against the world champions for the women? And we know Sasha wasn't going to beat Ronda Rousey at Hell in a Cell. Naomi wasn't going to beat Bianca Belair at Hell in a Cell. So why even put your women's tag team champions in that position in that match? So I have hated this from the jump. Naomi has taken WWE out of her bio and all that stuff. Like her name is still, actually no, it's not, because all her Instagram stuff I think is Trinity Fatu, which is her real name. I feel more so for Naomi than I do for Sasha, because Sasha has. It's not that Naomi doesn't, but Sasha has a life and a brand outside of WWE. Like, she's been a part of she was a part of the Mandalorian on Disney Plus. Like, she's got business ventures. Naomi, not so much. And I just really want to know, like, what the end game is on all this. They're not fired. They're just suspended indefinitely, whatever the hell that means, because we never know what's being suspended indefinitely means. I just feel bad for both of them, and I think this is another example of WWE not treating their talent the way they should, because this is unacceptable. They walk out, fine, and you strip them with a championship, whatever. That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do, because you shouldn't walk out. Like, to go on SmackDown right before the main event when you know everybody's watching right now for the main event, to give that statement about WWE or Sasha and Naomi laying down the fans, I thought was just classless, and I hated it. And it sucks for both of them, because they're both very talented. They both deserve to be in world title pictures as singles competitors, not as the tag team champions. And again, Sasha Banks is the reason why these championships exist. And now, because of her wanting to stand up for what she believed in and make sure that these championships mean something, she got suspended. And so has Naomi. And it's just such an unfortunate situation. And I hate it. I have hated it from the beginning, and I'm not going to stop hating it until something gets done about it, because I just really despise it.
I think the worst breaking up of a tag team they've ever done was probably the Iconics, because you split them up, and then you split them up, which really surprised me that they lost that match, and then they're gone. They both left.
They both got cut in the next line of cuts. It meant nothing. And they said that they had split them up because Peyton Royce was supposed to be getting pushed. And then they said, yeah, well, screw that, and fired them both. I don't know. I've always felt that look, Sasha Banks is my GOAT. I think she's the greatest women's wrestler of all time. I think she can hang with the best of them. I don't think there's one. I don't care who it is. I love Trish. I love Lita. Charlotte obviously is Charlotte. Bayley is Bayley. You've got Melina and Jacqueline, Victoria, Michelle McCool, Nikki Bella, Brie Bella. You've got all these talented women. I don't think AJ Lee even. I don't think any of them could. I don't think any of them are better than Sasha Banks. Whether it's on the mic, whether it's in the ring, any of it. Like I she's my GOAT. And that's my personal opinion. Not everyone agrees with me. That's fine. But she's also been the biggest. I don't care about Charlotte Flair. She's been the biggest women's superstar in WWE, organically from WWE in recent memory. And to treat her like this is just unacceptable. Enough of that. Let's talk about Hell in a Cell. It is the main event, but I want to start with talking about it right now because it's going to be the match of the night, as it should be. It is the Hell in a Cell match. Cody, Seth, 3. Cody won at WrestleMania, his return. He then won again at WrestleMania Backlash. And now they've got one more match, Hell in a Cell. Who you got? And how you feeling about this?
They threw you the ultimate curveball. We came on before WrestleMania Backlash and said, yeah, there's no way, Seth can lose that second match, and he ended up losing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have Cody Rhodes lose his first? I don't think so. Do you have Cody Rhodes lose his first feud back? I mean, you're trying to push this guy to be, somebody that can dethrone Roman Reigns. Essentially, that's the whole point of him being back, is to win a world championship in the name of his father. But yeah, I think Seth is doing the ultimate, putting him over, and to lose to him 3 times. I think really Seth should have won at WrestleMania Backlash. But I mean, a clean sweep over if you do Cody Rhodes a clean sweep over Seth Rollins, you better have something great planned for Cody Rhodes next time out, because
Oh yeah, 100%.
Because you can't follow up Cody Rhodes. I don't want to, you're taking your top guy in WWE. It's Roman. Obviously, they've been wanting Roman to be their guy for the years. They had to really push it. Seth Rollins has been the guy for such a long time, and it was just so unforced. And you have to take Cody Rhodes here, though, because there's no way Cody Rhodes loses the big match in this feud. Like, after winning the first 2, I feel like it would take all the steam out of it.
The only way, and I agree with you. I think Cody wins. The only way Cody doesn't win, though, is if we're getting a 4th match. But at that point, the 4th match would mean nothing. Because Hell in a Cell is supposed to be the ender of feuds. That's what Hell in a Cell is for. It's either to end a feud, or to start a feud, depending on what happens. Like, if you go back to the very first Hell in a Cell match, obviously that was twofold. It ended the feud with Shawn between Undertaker, but it also started the feud with Undertaker and Kane. Hell in a Cell is supposed to be the ender and or beginner of feuds, depending on how it's booked. Cody can't lose this match, though. Cody can't lose this match. You can't have Cody win at WrestleMania. You can't have Cody win at Backlash. Although I agree with you, he should have lost to make this match much more of a toss-up and then lose in Hell in a Cell. That makes no sense. You're also right, though. Whatever, should Cody win this Sunday, which I think he will, whatever is next has to be massive. Like, it has to be. They're not going to put him in the World Championship picture yet, obviously.
No. And
they need to keep him out of the mid-card because that's going to suck. But whatever they have following up has to be incredible. The last time we saw Rollins in the 3-match feud was with Edge. They fought at Money in the Bank. No, they did not fight at Money in the Bank. Did they? No, they didn't fight at Money in the Bank. They fought at the pay-per-view after Money in the Bank, whichever that one is. I can't think of what it was. But they fought at the pay-per-view after Money in the Bank last year. They had their second match on Raw in Madison Square Garden, and then their third match was inside Hell in a Cell at Crown Jewel. I believe. Fantastic match. Edge wins the feud. This time around, Seth Rollins, another major 3-match feud. What's next for Seth if he loses this feud? Because he would have lost now his last 2 major feuds. And they were 3-match feuds, and they both ironically end in Hell in a Cell.
They'll think of something, because the whole Joker thing just kind of works.
It does. It does.
Oof, that's tough, though, because, I mean, we're, after, you're thinking about, like, where's the star power after that for Rollins? Because you go from Edge, a Hall of Famer, Cody Rhodes, who is, your first big AEW guy to go from AEW to back to WWE. Where could, I mean, I'm trying to think of a name. It's not
2 major losses. So, like, where does he go? Do they switch him? Like, do you think they write him off TV and then he comes back as face Seth Rollins? Do you think this is the end of heel Rollins? Like, there's not a lot of lateral movement here. at all. There's not.
Yeah. Does Cody Rhodes? Does Cody? Obviously Rollins beat Cody Rhodes down on Raw. Does Cody Rhodes beat down Rollins so bad that he has to take time off? Like does he come back?
I don't think it's, and that's why it's like it's tough. It really is. Randy's off of TV for a while because of his back. He has legitimate back issues. He's not on TV, so you can't put him in a feud with Randy. Are you going to put him in a feud with Bobby Lashley? Do you have him feud with Riddle? I'm trying to think of names here. Like, he's not. This would be the biggest swerve, and I don't think they're going to do it. But this would be such a massive swerve. He's not going to join Edge's. He's not going to join Judgment Day with Edge and Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley. I would assume not. That'd be so great if he did, though. But I don't think they will. I don't think they're going that route. What's next for Seth? Like, the only thing that makes sense would be you just write him off the TV at this point, because there's nothing lined up for him. You're not going to have him feud with KO. You're not going to put him in a feud with Ezekiel, obviously. Like I said, there's no Bobby Lashley. Theory's a heel, so you're not going to have a heel feud with a heel. That's not going to get much traction because neither of them are really a tweener. Like, where are we kind of going with Seth? Roman's not on TV, and I think we're too far removed from the Royal Rumble match to kind of hash that back up again. Do you move him to SmackDown? Does he feud with Drew? I mean, but then he'd probably lose that feud too, because as we talked about before the show, they're on their way to putting Drew in the world title picture to face. It looks like to face Roman for one, if not both of the belts at Clash at the Castle in September, which is 3 months from now, and that time's going to come. It's like, what's next for Seth Rollins? It's. Are we just not going to? You know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to figure out what's next for Seth. It's also kind of difficult to see what's next for Cody. But I mean, it's much easier to find out what's next for Cody because Cody's a face. You can throw anybody at him. There's not a lot of good faces on Raw that aren't already tied up in something. Like AJ and Finn are tied up with Judgment Day. You've got Ezekiel and KO. They've got their thing. Like, everybody's booked. Everyone's, for lack of a better term, booked solid. What's next for Seth freaking Rollins if he loses this match?
I think time off. I think he has to take time off.
Come back as the drip god, or does he come back as burn it down Seth Rollins? Like, then that becomes a thing. How are we going to bring him back? Are we just not going to see Rollins get into a Royal Rumble when they like to bring back guys? It's tough. Like, I love Seth so much, but like, what's going to be? It's hard. It's hard to pinpoint what's next for Seth Rollins. It really is. And a part of me kind of hopes that he wins so that we can kind of figure it out. But I know Cody's going to win, and I'm going to love that Cody wins this match. I'd be surprised if Cody loses, honestly. I'd be really surprised if Cody loses.
Yeah, my thing is, do they actually know or have an after plan for Seth Rollins?
I don't think so.
I don't think they do. So I think he's going to take time off.
I mean, he's got a kid at home, you know? It's not like he's got nothing to go home to, obviously. Yeah. It's just going to be really interesting to see kind of how that all unfolds. We just stay on Raw for a second. Obviously, let's talk about the triple threat match: Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch versus Asuka. I'm going to be honest with you. I hate this match. Okay, let me stop. I don't hate this match. I just hate that Becky Lynch is in the match. Belair obviously wins the championship from Becky at WrestleMania. They did not have a rematch at Backlash. I don't remember them having a rematch at Backlash. And now Asuka returns, and so now you have Asuka here. Again, I feel like this is probably the biggest no-brainer of the night. Bianca Belair is going to retain. The question though becomes, what's the point of Becky Lynch being in the match, and then two, where does Becky and Asuka's feud go from here? Because I thought that was the plan. It was the plan, of course, until Sasha and Naomi walked out, I'm guessing. But I would assume, though, that Becky and Asuka now is their feud. Are we just putting a pin in that until later? Like, because we haven't really had a follow-up on that really ever since Asuka returned. Like, they had their match, but then that was kind of it. It didn't really pay off. I would expect that they're going to have another match down the line.
Is Becky Lynch in the match to take the pin? Like, is it one of those things where I think it is, because I think you're trying to save Asuka a little bit, because obviously she's coming off the very dull title reign. And she's someone that's always going to be able to capture momentum because of who she is. But if you're just trying to rebuild her momentum a little bit, a loss where she's getting pinned kills that. Becky Lynch is kind of like, at this point, she's kind of done the whole man thing. She's both as kind of a tweener, I would say, and then as like a total heel.
Mm-hmm.
So you can bring Becky Lynch back whenever, and she'll be like a top competitor. Like her and Charlotte Flair are two people that can just kind of be thrown into anything, and like you think of them as a threat. And I think the same thing of Asuka, but we haven't really seen it on WWE TV.
Yeah.
So like, at least not recently. So I think they're trying to rebuild Asuka's momentum a little bit. So Asuka could come out and say like, "Hey, I didn't lose to you.
Yeah.
I didn't get pinned." One of those things. So I think Becky Lynch is solely the sacrifice in this matchup.
It's that makes perfect sense. This is just in the situation where, I mean, maybe we're waiting down the line. Maybe we want the bigger match for Bianca and Asuka at Money in the Bank. If I'm not mistaken, that is the next pay-per-view after Hell in a Cell in July. We've got Bobby Lashley versus Omos and MVP. I have not been sold on the whole Bobby Lashley Omos thing from the beginning, if I'm being completely honest with you. Just off the simple fact that what is like Omos beating a former WWE champion, is Omos equipped to take that next step? He's not in my opinion. But I feel like because it's a handicap match, Omos and Bobby are going to win. I mean, Omos and MVP are going to win the match. I don't see how Bobby wins, which is unfortunate because then Bobby, after getting legitimately hurt back at Elimination Chamber a couple months ago, has gone from being the WWE champion to counting the lights for Omos and MVP. And I don't like that for Bobby Lashley at all.
No, I mean, it's kind of just been the inconsistent booking for Bobby Lashley, and it shows you that they're kind of sold on Omos. Whether or not people like that or not. Obviously, if you're sold on him, MVP is the perfect guy to help him. But yeah, I mean, I think he gets the win here. I don't think there's any way that, unless you somehow have Bobby Lashley pin MVP, which is like a lot, like when well, I don't know how much sense that would make, since the feud's supposed to be Lashley versus Omos. But like a lot of the times, if you saw Bobby Lashley and MVP in a tag team match, it was always MVP kind of bringing the team down.
Yeah.
So unless they want to go that route, which I don't think is really, that wouldn't really make any sense.
Anybody? Yeah, I don't think that's beneficial at all.
I think Lashley is gonna get. I think he's gonna get decimated. I think he pulled off the lucky win in the steel cage match because the cage, he almost threw him through the cage. Unfortunately, I think Bobby Lashley gets buried here in favor of Omos. And it's something we've seen far too often.
I hate that so much for Lashley because I love Lashley. I think this is probably going to be the most fun match I'm going to, at least for me. Kevin Owens versus Ezekiel. Kevin Owens is obviously still in the quest to prove that Ezekiel is not Elias' younger brother, but is in fact Elias with a shaved off beard and shorter hair, which we all know that. But I love this. We've seen DNA tests, we've seen lie detectors, we've seen help from American Alpha. Nothing's worked. This one could go either way. You could obviously have KO win this match because it's Kevin Owens. You could also have Ezekiel win this match and kind of elevate him. I feel like it's more likely that the latter happens than the former. I think this is the perfect bounce back feud for KO after Stone Cold at WrestleMania. Like, he swung for the fences for Stone Cold at WrestleMania. He got Stone Cold at WrestleMania. He delivered with Stone Cold at WrestleMania. That was amazing. This, I think, is the perfect follow-up to that because KO has nothing to lose here at this point. There's no real name value to Ezekiel. There's no real issue with KO losing. I think this is the perfect matchup for KO because if KO wins, it's like, oh yeah, well, it's Ezekiel. Like, now he can kind of prove that he's Elias and move on with his life. But if KO loses, it's like, oh yeah, well, okay, he lost, but he's helping to elevate Ezekiel. And I think KO's at that point in his career where he is kind of like the guy that if he doesn't have a championship, he's going to be used in situations like this to kind of help put over younger talent, even though we know that Ezekiel is just Elias. I'm going to pick Ezekiel just for the fun of it. Because I think that would be, I don't think anyone's expecting that. And I think that'd be kind of cool to see what they do to follow up that if Ezekiel actually wins. So I'm picking Ezekiel, but I feel like Kevin Owens is going to win, but I definitely am picking Ezekiel in this match.
Yeah, it's you think of Hell in a Cell, all these intense matches. Obviously, the Lashley Omos feud has gotten a little intense. Rollins versus Rhodes is what it is. Lynch, Belair, and Asuka. It's not super intense for Bianca Belair, but it's her first title defense, and this is kind of like the break feud. This is kind of like the feud where you can just kind of sit back and relax and not be on the edge of your seat.
Yeah,
and I do like the matchup. Obviously, it's working. The lie detectors. It's been good, because of KO, because of Alpha Academy. They're working this feud. Obviously, Ezekiel, Elias. But I think the feud's been good for what it is. If you can appreciate it for what it is, it's been terrific. And I think Ezekiel wins here. Just because you got that break type of feud. The fans love him. The fans love the whole Ezekiel thing. And to see Ezekiel win his first big match, I think that's the direction they're going here.
100%. I think it makes sense. This match makes no sense to me, but it is on the card, so we'll talk about it. Theory versus Mustafa Ali. I mean, we know Theory's going to win the match. There's no way Mustafa Ali wins this match for the U.S. Championship. I don't really know why it's on the card. There's been some build to it. Not enough to warrant it being on the Hell in a Cell card, though, in my opinion, at least. We won't spend too much time on it simply because I don't really care for it. I don't know exactly the point of it.
I think it's
giving Theory something to do, I guess, just to make sure that we still kind of know he's there, I guess. But I mean, outside of that, I don't really see the value.
Especially after losing to McAfee.
Yeah.
And, I think this is a nice little bounce back feud. I mean, Mustafa Ali is not the biggest name, but if you think about it, Mustafa Ali was supposed to be a world champion at this point, at least at one point. The whole Kofi Mania thing.
That was supposed to be Ali, yeah.
That was supposed to be Ali. So you could think of that, like they think of Ali, or at least I don't know if they still do, but they thought of him as like, maybe consider him for a world title push.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Theory obviously needs the win. And I like it. I think it keeps the U.S. title on the card. Like you said, it's not one of those things where Austin Theory's never going to defend his title. I think it's going to be a good decisive victory for Austin Theory too, just to really prove, to make Vince McMahon kind of proud of him again. After losing to Pat McAfee, which I was surprised. I thought Austin Theory would still win that match. I thought the whole fun of it for Pat McAfee was that he gets to be in WrestleMania, but for him to actually win that match against a guy that's supposed to be Vince's guy, especially on screen, was a little surprising. So I think this is a good bounce back for Austin Theory. I think he wins. I don't think the match is going to – I think Theory's going to dominate. I really do. Because I think you just need that decisive victory for Austin Theory. I don't think they're thinking about Ali too much as they are Austin Theory.
No. last, of course, and certainly not least, it's Judgment Day, which is Edge, Damian Priest, and Rhea Ripley, and against Finn, AJ, and Liv. I mean, I know Judgment Day is going to win this match. It'll be interesting to see how this evolves. I feel like, and we're in June, right? And Survivor Series is in November. I feel like this is a very long-term build towards a Survivor Series match where two more people are going to get added to Judgment Day and two more people will get added to this Balor Styles Morgan thing. Probably one more female and one more male on both sides. Who that's going to be, though, I don't know. We've seen Edge kind of post pictures of different guys on his Twitter over the past couple of days. Ciampa's been one of those guys. He's posted just about anybody and everybody, though, honestly. Kind of teasing. Judgment Day wins here. I mean, I don't see how Finn, AJ, and Liv wins this match. I don't. It just wouldn't make sense. This would be Judgment Day's first match as a faction. I actually love this mixed 6-person tag dynamic. I love that. We haven't seen that since Eminem back in the early 2000s with I know there was Molina and Johnny Nitro was his name at the time. I don't remember who that third person was, but this is kind of Mercury. Yeah, this is kind of a cool dynamic here to get a 6-person mixed tag like this.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, I think that the only way that it would be like a toss up is if you did Priest and Ripley versus Styles and Liv Morgan. Edge being in the match, I think, guarantees you that Judgment Day is going to win.
Yeah.
Obviously, like losing the first match as a faction makes no sense. And Styles, Balor, and Morgan aren't really like a faction. They're just like kind of teaming up for now.
Yeah.
But I think it's great. It's a good foot for Judgment Day to get started with. I mean, you think about like Damian Priest, kind of still that newer superstar. For him to get a victory over Balor and Styles, two workhorse legends in the industry,
Yeah.
would be huge, especially alongside a Hall of Famer like Edge. Obviously, Ripley not having much, they haven't had too much for her to do. I think it does great things for her to win this match. And it keeps Liv Morgan on the card, so I think that's definitely a plus. So all these things involved, it makes for a good match, and I think it'll be a great match. Like, I don't think this will be like Judgment Day showing their dominance, winning in 5 minutes. I think it's going to be down to the wire, and it's going to be maybe one mistake by Balor, Styles, and Morgan, or one underhanded tactic by Judgment Day that wins Judgment Day this match. Like, it's going to be so close, I think, and it's going to be could very easily be I guess I can't really say it's going to be the match of the night over Rollins and Rhodes, but it could come close, to be honest with you. I think all the star power that's in this match, all the unknowns with Ripley and Priest, how do they do against great talent like Styles and Balor? I want to see Rhea Ripley on a big stage more. So this is a huge match for everybody involved.
100%. Last thing to talk about: there are no SmackDown SmackDown matches on the card. I was under the impression, obviously, that the title unification match would be a Hell in a Cell match on this card. Obviously, though, Randy's been having back problems, so they had to move that match up. I'm presuming that's why they had it on SmackDown and instead of Hell in a Cell. I thought that it would be on Hell in a Cell. Roman's not on the card at all, so there's no SmackDown rotation there. We're recording this Thursday night. Do you think between now and Sunday we'll get a SmackDown match on the card, or do you think this is all Raw?
I think if we do, I mean, you could do. Sheamus and McIntyre are on what brand?
McIntyre's technically on Raw, but he just teamed with Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston on last week's episode of SmackDown. So he's on Raw. He's officially a Raw superstar, but he's been on SmackDown the past couple months.
So maybe you do something with the New Day and Sheamus and Butch, maybe something like that. I mean, it's hard to imagine like any sort of SmackDown tag team title match, even if it's in Hell in a Cell without Roman Reigns being involved. And I don't think Roman Reigns is going to just come back for Hell in a Cell like here he is. So I think that's out the window, unfortunately. I think it was planned. So I think your only chance would be a Drew McIntyre Sheamus based type of match, which would be nice, but
It's
I don't
possible.
know.
The only other thing I could think of is Ricochet, maybe defending the IC belt. Number one, I'm almost positive that they did that. That'd be on the pre-show, which Ricochet would deserve. And then two, I don't want to see Ricochet versus Shanky for the IC championship. So there's that. Although he has actually been feuding with Walter. Maybe we get Ricochet versus Walter on this card, or maybe they wait until Money in the Bank. I don't know. I just thought about that because I was looking through. I was like, there's no SmackDown at all on this card. Like I said, there's no Roman, so there goes not only just your SmackDown star, there goes your biggest star. It's interesting to see what they do with that, as far as whether this is just going to be an all Raw thing. If it is, would this be the return of brand exclusive pay-per-views, you think?
Maybe. I mean,
because even though Roman has both the belts, they have been very adamant of the fact that the brand split's not over. And this hasn't been branded as a Raw only pay-per-view. This has just been branded as Hell in a Cell. But there's 6 matches on the card, and there's only Raw superstars on the card. I don't think they're going to add a 7th or 8th match. And if they do, one, if not both of them, would likely be on the pre-show. Like, kind of hesitant to. I think the match card we have right now is what we'll have on Sunday.
I could see maybe Sheamus and McIntyre getting added. Other than that, an IC title match would be nice. I mean, I almost forgot again.
I'm sorry.
I almost forgot that Ricochet was. I just don't think about it.
Yeah, because they've been having Shanky shuck and jive with in front of the ring announcer, who's Ricochet's real life girlfriend. And because that's the quality content we want to see on episode of SmackDown. Shanky shucking and jiving at ringside. I think Ricochet is going to drop the championship to Gunther at some point, likely at Money in the Bank, because I don't think, unless they announce it tomorrow, I don't think we're going to see that match on Sunday. Because the card is already kind of, there's 6 matches on the card. I don't see them adding a 7th. I was expecting 2 Hell in a Cell matches. One of them would be a championship match. There's not any champions outside of obviously the tag titles that I thought, like I said, would be inside Hell in a Cell, the tag team unification match. There's nothing else that I can foresee as being another Hell in a Cell match. So it looks like we're getting just the one Hell in a Cell match with Cody and Seth, which I have no problem with because it's fantastic and it makes that match mean even more because it's the only one and it's the main event. But also, like, there's no SmackDown superstars on the card, and this maybe could be the beginning of brand exclusive pay-per-views only. Although I think that maybe this just has a lot to do with just the fact that, like, kind of real life kind of hit WWE in the face real hard, with Sasha, Naomi, and then Randy being legitimately injured. I don't think we're going to see Ronda on this card. I don't think we'll see Ricochet on the card. And I think if they were going to put New Day and the Brawling Brutes, apparently is their faction's name, if they were going to put those guys on the card, they wouldn't have had Drew McIntyre come on to SmackDown. They would have saved that announcement for Hell in a Cell, and that would have been a Hell in a Cell match. So, or not a Hell in a Cell match, but would have been on the Hell in a Cell card. So maybe we're set here with Raw. Thank you, Sal, for coming on the show. Thank you guys for listening. It's always a pleasure to have Sal on the show to talk wrestling, obviously. Sal's a Rangers fan, so of course he's living really good in the world of hockey. He's also a Mets fan, and the Mets have spanked the Nationals a lot over the past couple days. I believe the combined score from the series is 31-5, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was at the game. They won 10-0 Tuesday night. So that was
the embarrassment that is the Washington Nationals. But yeah, man, thank you for coming on. Just let everybody know where they can find you and what's up next week.
I Sports in the Big Apple. You can find me at Sports in the Big Apple on Instagram. You can find all the episodes on Spotify, Libsyn, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast by searching up Sports in the Big Apple. I think I'm just going to do more talking about hockey, how the Rangers series is going, Rangers Lightning, and then kind of deep dive here. The Mets entering a huge road trip against, the Dodgers, the Padres, and then the Angels. So huge 10-game road trip coming up here. I think this is where you find out if the Mets are for real. They're getting some real good competition here. So let's see how they can handle it. Obviously the Rangers really probably surprised everybody. And I think people forgot that the Lightning had 9 days off. So they were a little bit rusty in game one, but expect the series to go at least 6-7 games. So I'll be back to talk about that within the next couple of days. But it's been awesome being on the show, Marcus, and I can't wait for Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, Hell in a Cell is this Sunday, so we had to recap. If you guys haven't already, please check out the NBA Finals preview that I did with JT, Don, and Justin this past Wednesday. And also, at the time when this comes out, the Panthers off-season review with Brian Bolster will have come out on Friday, and the Game 1 recap and Game 2 preview will have come out with Justin prior to Game 2. So please check out all those things, like, subscribe, follow, and all that good stuff. I love all of you guys, and I appreciate all the love and support. We're coming up on, oddly enough, 2 years and 2 months. August 2nd will be 2 years of Go Talk. I've enjoyed every episode, every step of the way. And remember, please remember, September 1st is a big day in history. It's going to be a fantastic day, so make sure you start and circle it on your calendar so you don't forget it, because you're not going to want to miss what happens on September 1st. So for Sal of Sports in the Big Apple, this is Marcus of Go Talk with Marcus signing off. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, you guys enjoy the rest of your lives.